Before we dive into this one, Broncos country, I gotta say something real quick because it matters more than you'd think. We are sitting at 650 subscribers on this channel, which means we are only 350 subscribers away from hitting 1,000. That's it. That's the whole gap. If you've been sitting there enjoying these breakdowns for free like some kind of freeloader, and hey, no judgment. I did the same thing before I had a channel. Now's the time to smash that subscribe button and close the gap with us. It costs you nothing, it takes 2 seconds, and it means everything to a channel like this one trying to grow right alongside this football team. Okay, rant over. Let's talk Broncos. Is it just me, or does the air smell a little sweeter today? Do your legs feel a little lighter? Are you breathing a huge, dramatic sigh of relief like you just got off a roller coaster you weren't sure you'd survive? Because Broncos country waited 7 long, agonizing off-season-filled months for actual football, and last night we finally got it. So pick your heads up out there, because I know what the scoreboard said. I know the Broncos lost by 20 points to the Green Bay Packers. But here's the thing, and I need you to hear me on this. That result means absolutely nothing. Zero. Zilch. Nada there. There is a mountain of positive stuff to take away from that game, and none of it has anything to do with the final score. We really shouldn't even need reminding of this, but let's rewind the tape anyway. Last season, in the very first preseason game, the Broncos traveled out to San Francisco with all these sky-high expectations. Bo Nix takes the field with the starters, and on his very first drive, he throws the ball away in the end zone for an intentional grounding call, which somehow turns into an automatic safety for the 49ers. On the first play, the first drive, Broncos fans were sprinting for the exits like the building was on fire, absolutely convinced the sky was falling. And guess what happened next? None of that mattered one single bit. Bo Nix went on to become the least sacked quarterback in all of football and dragged this team all the way to the AFC Championship game. The preseason meant nothing then, and if history is any indicator, it means nothing now. And honestly, if you want proof of just how wild and meaningless these preseason swings can be, look no further than this year alone. Last week, the Broncos absolutely throttled the Atlanta Falcons, who looked so bad out there you'd have thought they were tanking for the #1 overall pick. Then, just days later, that same Atlanta team turns around and completely dismantles the Indianapolis Colts, a team that's actually trying to make the playoffs this year and probably will. Football is weird like that. Preseason wins and losses are basically fantasy football for people who don't play fantasy football. Fun to talk about means nothing when it actually counts. So let's talk about what actually matters, because there is a lot to unpack here, and it starts with the question Broncos country has been asking since the confetti settled after last season: is Bo Nix going to pick up right where he left off? That's all we wanted. That's the entire ask. And by every account, the answer is a resounding yes. Bo said afterward that it felt exactly like riding a bike, and his teammates echoed that in the locker room. The broadcast team put it perfectly too. Bo Nix picked up right where he left off, and where he left off was in the middle of a postseason run. That's the single biggest takeaway from the entire night. Full stop. Now let's get into the fun stuff, because the changes we're seeing in this offense are legitimately exciting. A big reason Bo Nix earned that unfortunate nickname last season, the check-down merchant, as some people so lovingly called him, is because his average depth of target was sitting around 7.5 yards in the air, one of the lowest marks in the entire league. Now that stat is a little misleading, because once J.K. Dobbins went down with injury, the Broncos basically turned the screen game into their backup running game out of necessity. But here's the exciting part. Through this first preseason game alone, Bo's average depth of target jumped up nearly 5 full yards compared to last season. If that trend holds into the regular season, that number would rank near the top of the entire NFL. Last year, only about 30% of his throws traveled 10 yards or more downfield. Last night, almost 70% of his attempts were 10-plus yards down the field. The man went 6 for 9 passing, And honestly, that Courtland Sutton incompletion was inches from being 7 for 9 on a throw that traveled well past that 10-yard mark and came out on an absolute rope. Some folks online are wondering if the offense is being specifically tailored to hide Bo Nix's weaknesses, feeding him a diet of safe checkdowns. Respectfully, that theory does not hold up, because 4 of his first 5 throws last night were legitimately difficult, high degree of difficulty attempts. And he was doing this with a 4th-string center snapping him the ball, without J.K. Dobbins in the backfield, without Marvin Mims out wide, going up against a defense that outside of one Micah Parsons was mostly backups and camp bodies. Didn't matter. That deep-out breaking ball to Courtland Sutton was a certified frozen rope. The seam route to Jaylen Waddle was gorgeous. The back shoulder throw to Sutton, Bo threw that 9 or 10 times in camp reportedly and connected on it 9 times out of 10. And then, chef's kiss, that beautiful wheel route touchdown to R.J. Harvey to cap it off. If you're in a fantasy football draft this week, go get Bo Nix stock right now while it's still relatively cheap, because his rookie season was a top 10 quarterback finish. Last season was a top 15 finish, and now he's got weapons around him he has genuinely never had in his career, including a healthy J.K. Dobbins, Jonah Coleman in the backfield, and of course, Jaylen Waddle out wide, who we are absolutely going to talk about. Here's something that might sound strange to say out loud, but that ugly final score might honestly be a gift. This is exactly the kind of humble pie the Broncos needed to eat before the games start counting. NFL.com currently has this team ranked as the 2nd best roster in all of professional football, which is the kind of praise that gets you comfortable. And comfortable is dangerous. Head coach Sean Payton was visibly, intentionally critical of the performance afterward, saying he wants Bo Nix playing again next week, and that if it were entirely up to him, he'd keep the starters in through the 3rd quarter of these preseason games. Bo Nix, for his part, said after the game that he wants to keep playing too. And when your head coach comes out and says flat out that there wasn't a single phase of the game where his team actually outplayed the opponent, they lost the line of scrimmage, they racked up more penalty yards, they turned the ball over more, they got beat on special teams and kickoff coverage, that's the kind of humbling gut check you want in week 1 of the preseason. You want to lay an egg like that right now, in a game that doesn't matter, rather than laying it in week 2 when the Jacksonville Jaguars roll into Denver for real. Now let's talk defense, because there's more good news buried in there than people are giving credit for. Upon a closer film review, the low point defensively, outside of the turnovers themselves, traces back to a Jordan Love touchdown that came off a miscommunication in coverage. A lot of folks online immediately wanted to run inside linebacker Alex Singleton out of town over it. Slow down, Broncos country. Watch the coaching staff's body language around this guy. Sean Payton and Vance Joseph gush about Alex Singleton constantly, and that doesn't happen by accident. Breaking the play down, you can see Singleton screaming pre-snap, clearly trying to get a backup defensive back lined up correctly after a late substitution at cornerback. The miscommunication traces back to that late swap, not to Singleton losing an assignment as an athlete. He wasn't beaten in coverage, he was reacting to a communication breakdown that is exactly the kind of thing preseason football exists to iron out. Once the secondary gets healthier and gets its communication locked in, this is going to look a whole lot cleaner. And it is nowhere close to how this defense actually played for most of last season. Can we talk about the aura Jaylen Waddle instantly brought to this offense? The man got exactly 6 offensive snaps in his Broncos debut and still ended up leading the entire team in receiving yards. 6 snaps. That's like showing up to a buffet taking 1 plate and somehow eating more than everybody else in the building. That's every bit of the reason this front office traded a first-round draft pick to go get him. And if you go back and rewatch that first catch under the lights at Mile High, you can see exactly what that moment meant to him. The formation the offense used to get him the ball was filthy. A tight bunch look with Bo Nix in shotgun that's going to be an absolute nightmare for opposing defenses all season. Some people online are saying Bo underthrew Waddle slightly on a certain rep and left a touchdown on the field, but if you actually watch the other broadcast angle, you can see he intentionally kept the ball back to protect his new receiver from a big hit, given exactly where the safety was positioned. That's touch, that's awareness, and that's exactly the kind of quarterback play that doesn't show up on a stat sheet, but absolutely shows up in a locker room. The pass rush, meanwhile, is going to be legitimately nasty this year, and they haven't even shown their full hand yet. These preseason games are running-based defensive concepts, none of the exotic blitz packages, none of the disguised pressures that this coaching staff loves to dial up when it actually matters. This is Vance Joseph playing it about as vanilla as he's capable of playing it, and the pass rush was still winning one-on-one reps in the backfield with a four-man rush and a roster full of backups. There was a questionable roughing the passer flag that turned a Green Bay field goal into a touchdown. Sure, but even with that penalty in the mix, watching this front get after the quarterback with backups in the game should have Broncos country very excited for when the starters are locked in together for 4 quarters. A few more bright spots worth mentioning before we wrap this up. Fullback Adam Prentice looked like a lock to make this roster, flattening a defender as a lead blocker in a way that made the whole stadium wince a little. Jonah Coleman's workload was kept limited and smart, and what we did see from him, patiently working the interior of the field instead of constantly trying to bounce runs outside like a lot of young backs do, was a great sign. Between J.K. Dobbins, Jonah Coleman, and R.J. Harvey, this running back room is shaping up to be a legitimate 1-2-3 punch that should make life a whole lot easier for Bo Nix all season long. As for Riley Moss, Sean Payton kept it simple in his press conference. He's good. The team is still figuring out exactly what the injury is and when he'll be back, but before he left the game, Moss looked outstanding matched up against one of the better receivers in football in Christian Watson. He undercut a route and completely took away the throwing window, which honestly shouldn't shock anyone because he did the exact same thing to Watson last season too. If Watson had actually caught that ball in stride with his speed, he probably wins the foot race to the end zone. But Moss simply didn't let it happen. Now, one small thing worth mentioning just to keep this balanced, because we're not here to only tell you sunshine and rainbows. A physical therapist making the rounds online pointed out that Bo Nix might not be stepping into a couple of his throws the way he ideally should be, showing a few clips where his weight looks like it's falling backward instead of driving forward, which can sometimes set up shoulder or oblique strain issues down the road. It's a fair point to flag, but reading too much into 6 or 7 throws from one preseason game feels premature, especially considering that in-person training camp reps showed him stepping into throws with even more velocity than last season. Worth keeping an eye on, not worth panicking over. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know if you're seeing something different on tape. So here's where we land. Broncos country. The scoreboard said the Broncos lost by 20. The tape says Bo Nix is throwing the ball downfield with more confidence than ever. Jaylen Waddle is an instant difference maker. The pass rush hasn't even shown its real playbook yet. The running back room is stacked 3 deep, and the one apparent defensive breakdown of the night traces back to a fixable communication issue rather than a talent problem. This was the good kind of ugly. The kind of ugly that keeps a talented Super Bowl window team from getting comfortable before the games that actually count. It's going to be an exciting week here in Broncos country as we roll into the final stretch of the preseason and start gearing up for the real deal against Kansas City. And hey, before you go, we need your help getting this channel to 1,000 subscribers, and we are only 350 away. That is genuinely nothing in the grand scheme of things. If this breakdown helped you see last night's game a little differently, do us a solid, smash that like button, drop a comment telling us what you saw on tape, and if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you don't miss a single breakdown all season long. We've got a Super Bowl window to talk about, and we want Broncos country riding with us the entire way. Until next time, this has been Brinkos. Let's get to 1,000.